So in the meanwhile, do read this editorial also. Indian Express. Done. 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 Yes. So this is an editorial in Indian Express today about Quad. There is one more editorial in Hindu about Quad. Yes, I hope you understand. Now, who wants to tell me the summary of both the editorials in your own language? What did you take away? What did you understand? Because Quad is an important topic for IRGS paper 2. So you need to understand the essence on how or what India has done or what India is getting into, and what does this editorial actually tries to convey, and what are the things that you can read between the lines. Any volunteers?
What is not about what is not anti-China? All the 4 countries in the Quad have a vision, that with the sharing of technology, logistics support, supply chain management, etc. It also broadened the India's it has an advantage to India to broaden its vision and the development and sharing of technology, etc. And China should not see it as an anti-Chinese forum or a group.
Yes, Sindhu?
Like all the 4 countries in the Quad have their own interests. Like Japan and Australia because of maritime tensions and trade. US to reiterate its global leadership. India, though Ladakh standoff is there, for like global good. There, but China should not see it as an anti-China alliance because all the 4 countries have good relationship with China. So China should rethink its perspective regarding Quad.
Okay. What does Hindu editorial say? Like both summary is same.
So it's basically, even though 4 countries individually are trying to maintain relations with China, Indo-Pacific is still an issue which can't be addressed individually. So all the 4 of them have come together, and this is the perfect timing to show it that it's not just a military alliance. It can also be used for productive purposes. But when there comes a situation where they have, like when China is more aggressive, it has to rethink about the alliance because this
You can
yeah, this has an equal chance to become a military alliance, but as of today, the only thing they're projecting it as is a safety mechanism for Indo-Pacific.
Okay. So how many of you have seen GS paper to 2020 mains? Any question about Quad? Quad is moving away from a military bloc to a trade bloc, or trade bloc to a military bloc. Military bloc to a trade bloc. That was the question. UPSC was visionary, right? So UPSC asked a question that we are moving away from a military bloc to trade bloc to military bloc, and we should avoid that. Okay. Now this last two lines, be very careful in analyzing them. What Indian Express is subconsciously telling you is this, right? It is up to Beijing now to rethink, okay, the current aggressive policies and seek cooperative relation with Asian neighbors and US. But if China continues to pursue the hegemony, the Quad is bound to become an inevitable balancing force. So in a sense, are we planning Quad, or is Quad a reactionary mechanism to China? In a way, China is controlling our foreign policy. Is it a pessimistic view or an optimistic view? Pessimistic view, or in a negative tone, right? What I am trying to tell you is, see, China will decide the future of Quad. That is what Indian Express is saying. If China dials down the aggression, if China tone downs the aggression, if China becomes softer with all the Asian countries, Quad doesn't have any legitimacy. See, again, Asia is a big term. All China has to do is mend relationship with India and Quad is dead. Yes or no? Without Quad, without India, there is no Quad technically. Yes? And India, instead of seeing Quad as a balancing act or a net security provider for Indian Ocean, India is converting very smartly Quad into a forum where we can sell more. Yes or no? We are using it for our own national interests. We are not worried about China. That is also one takeaway. You know, if we are really worried about China, we would have converted Quad into more of a military alliance rather than a trade alliance. What we need is growth, and government is using diplomacy to promote growth rather than military alliance. Why? Anyhow, the bilateral relations with USA will keep on growing. That cannot be stopped. Yes, and Australia and Japan has nothing to do with Indian defense sector, more or less. Yes, but again, India is very smart in showcasing itself that we are friend of all. We encourage multilateralism and we are not enemies to any one country. We will use the logistic technologies of Australia, yes, the finance from Japan, the technology from Japan, USA, again finance and technology. In the end, what are we gaining? We are gaining everything we can, and we are giving up what? The stereotype that China already have, that India is closer to USA. Yes or no? Even when we did nothing, we are always blamed as closer to USA. When we are closer to USA also, we will be blamed. Then why not be close and be blamed? Yes, again that is for our own national interest. In this sense, if China says anything, again China is not so innocent to believe, right? Quad is not a military alliance. It knows what is the interior or ulterior purpose of Quad, but it is very smart in not poking the bear. Yes, but again we cannot be so innocent to believe that Quad won't be converted into military alliance or China won't do any adventures in Indian Ocean. That is why we are putting a lot of submarine tracking and all these things through Japanese technology in Indian Ocean. Yes, so we are covering all the bases. So the question here is more, is China controlling India's foreign policy, or are we being proactive? Yes, to get scores you will write, we are being very proactive. That is truth also, right? If you see it from that perspective only.
Sir, any foreign policy is based on how other countries react and we.
So dictating is one thing and being proactive, reacting is one thing, right? It's like you dominating the chess game. You are allowing the player, or you are you know, you are allowing only the enemy to come out in these arenas, right? I am telling you, only come from right road or left road. Yes, but there are so many other roads which are not even an option. So in that sense, China has already had a huge advantage. Yes, again, take about the relations, bilateral relations with USA, China and USA, Japan and Australia. If tomorrow USA and China mends the roads, okay, what is there for us? Right? And only in the heat of the moment of Ladakh, we are saying, but we are not taking any rash decisions. To the credit of Jaishankar, we are not taking any rash decisions. And at the same time, we are pacifying China also, right? We have kept the line open. We are negotiating with China. Clear? Right? So again, it will be very narrow to think that we are allowing China to dictate the policy. In more or less, it's about being proactive. Let economic ties be strengthened, and always remember, where there are economic ties, wherever the money flows, automatically if there is a threat, everybody will automatically come. Right now, the only argument is what? If something happens in Indian Ocean, nobody will respond. But if everybody's financial interest is vested in Indian Ocean, everybody will come to protect Indian Ocean. Yes or no? We are having, see, Germany is sending submarines to Indian Ocean. France is sending. Saudi Arabia is sending for naval drills. Why are we involving all these countries in Indian Ocean? More the merrier. The more the countries that are involved, no one country can threaten the stake. That is the long-term proactive vision. Yes. So you invest something automatically, then you will be liable for something. Clear? So again, never ever write that Quad is a military alliance or Quad is created to control China. The one line that Prime Minister told, or before that only we have discussed, is free and open Indo-Pacific. Free and open for everyone. More the better. Clear? Any questions?
Sir, can you also say it is not a military alliance because the more important military, like those countries which have military ramifications in Indian Ocean are not exactly the part of Quad, like Indonesian islands or thing, but we've gone further for people who are more interested in trade, US, Japan and Australia. So you can't blatantly say Quad is a military alliance based on that one.
Again, you can also say, instead of thinking it as a geographical dimension, we can say it more of a, democratical ethos, right? And we cannot ignore two things. What is TPP? Trans-Pacific Partnership. The other one is RCEP. If RCEP is there, and if China is doing some adventure in Indian Ocean, it is going to be hurted, because all the countries of RCEP are where? In Indo-Pacific, this region only, right? So China has also have economic interest in promoting free and open trade. But as history has taught us, don't have any fault lines. Fault lines are always problematic, right? They can be exploited anytime. So Indian Ocean is a huge fault line between India and China, and we are proactively converting it into something else. Clear? Yes? Okay. Now again, enough of Quad. Okay. Yes. There is one more article, reaching out to farmers in Indian Express. So this is about financial transfer or direct income support to farmers. So there is a famous scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Kisan, PM Kisan. Yes, we have our own Telangana's Raitu Bandhu scheme and Odisha's Kalia. So for prelims orientation, what is PM Kisan is an important question. PM Kisan is a very important scheme. And again, from 2019, UPSC has stopped asking schemes per se. You don't need to do PhD in 300 schemes, right? But 30 most important schemes you have to learn. Now, PM Kisan, what does PM Kisan do? Before the harvest season starts, it will give you certain amount of money. That is direct income support. Why? It will reduce the input costs to the farmers. So that is the ultimate purpose of PM Kisan. Now, what this article is saying is, Kalia has used a lot of technology, right, and smartness, and this can be expanded pan-India. Okay, the first and foremost thing they discuss is this. What does Kalia do? Kalia uses three things: unification, verification and exclusion. Unification, verification and exclusion. Again, I cannot see how you cannot not use the article for mains answer writing. Long term, you will definitely use this article. If I were you, I will save this article and use it somewhere, right? First of all, you have to unify databases. Now, what is the biggest problem in India? Identification of beneficiaries. Yes or no? Identification of beneficiaries. So there are a lot of government schemes. Who is eligible for what? How will I know? So there are 10 different databases. Yes. So what Odisha has smartly done is they have used databases from other data like National Food Security Act, caste census, NREGA and Aadhaar bank account. So they are using the technology to merge all these databases and identify the right beneficiaries. Yes. Next, and automatically when you link it to the JAM Trinity, Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile, ghost beneficiaries are eliminated. Yes or no? One phone number can be linked to one Aadhaar number and that Aadhaar number must be verified through biometric. Only then money will be transferred. Yes. Now, as if you remember, there was one example in Delhi, I think, and Delhi or somewhere, a bike was stolen. I told you, a bike was stolen. The bike owner is getting tickets that your bike has crossed the red signal, but the bike owner doesn't have any solution where his bike is. So the traffic police are not talking with the law and order police or crime branch. Yes, somebody has stolen a bike and the thief is roaming throughout the city and breaking the signals because it's not his bike, right? Automatically who will get the ticket? Owner will get the ticket. So the traffic police knows where the bike is or who is riding that bike, but the people who are related to the theft, they don't know. That means right hand is not talking to left hand. So if both the databases are merged, what will happen? Automatically synergy will take place. It will save a lot of resources and energy. That is exactly what she is or they are talking about. This one paragraph tells the entire story. Right? Databases, government tech platforms should be interoperable. National Food Security Act should talk to NREGA. NREGA should talk to Poshan Abhiyan. When all these databases talk to each other, what will happen? You will find new patterns. You will find new links, like who is a real beneficiary, who needs more support. Clear? I hope you understand. Again, that is the next argument she brings in, right? So privacy first structure should be created. Privacy first structure should be created. At least from now on, whatever database you are going to create, make sure it's privacy first. Only the government, that to the minimum intrusion, only to the limited effect that I need to know who is who. If I want to know whether Srinidhi is Srinidhi or not, okay, I will call that person and ask her to verify the biometric, and once that biometric is verified, that's all I need to know. Yes.
But then again, once you argue that if you have enough databases,
see again,
we can uniquely identify.
Definitely, I'm not criticizing, but the thing is, for public service delivery, you can do this. Or what I want to say is this: going beyond, use randomization or tokenization. Don't even give all the details to government. See, privacy first is what? Tokenization, right? I don't even want to know whether, let's say, Chakri is Chakri or not, but by verification using biometric, the database will know and he will know. That is all I need to know. Yes. So if the green light comes in the biometric, all I need to know is what? Like that person is who he says he is and he is eligible for that benefit. Right? Say for example, you are an IAS officer, your Aadhaar is linked to the database. Okay. You earn certain amount of money, your bank details still, you are not BPL. I need not know your name, but you don't fulfill that criteria. Government employees are ineligible for Ujjwala benefit. Right? When you go to take that Ujjwala benefit, for example, someone from your household, that biometric will fail you.
Okay.
Why? You are not eligible. Do I need to know any details about you? No, right? That can be achieved through technology. Again, it's not that easy, I know, but the thing is, that should be the center of the argument. The more you can leverage the technology, the better public service deliveries will be. For example, PM Kisan, the prelims question can be like this: who are not eligible for PM Kisan? State government employees are eligible for PM Kisan? How many of you know the answer? Yes, Santosh? They are eligible. State government employees, central government employees, pensioners, public servants, MLAs, MPs, all these people are not eligible for PM Kisan. So you can, let's say, link all these Aadhaar cards of these employees to that particular database. By default you are not ineligible. Like you can remove them through technology, right? Again, lot of brainstorming has to be done how it has to be achieved, but the concept is Odisha has already done that. We can use it to synergize so many schemes, and if we throw in artificial intelligence also, it will tell you small details. For example, let's say a woman goes to Anganwadi center, her weight is uploaded to a database. Her weight or body mass index or birth, weight of the child at the birth, all these things are digitized. Then probably artificial intelligence will identify that this particular family is getting the food grains but being malnourished. Okay, target that particular family more. Artificial intelligence can do that. It will analyze 10 times more than a human eye can. Yes, so the targeting will improve manyfold. Yes, saying all Antyodaya families is one thing, and identifying within the Antyodaya families is one more thing. Again, lot of privacy issues and debates will happen, but why will I upload my body weight and all those things. But the thing is, how am I going to protect that data? How am I making sure that the least amount of human intervention is there? Yes, as long as it's computer's eyes only, I am fine with it. Yes, as long as it's a human discretion, problems will arise, but that should be managed somehow. So please read this article at your own leisure. You will understand and appreciate it better, right? Especially from a bureaucrat point of view, this is a paradise. Yes or no? From the right activist point of view, there are so many issues, but from a bureaucrat point of view, which is potential future you is, right, you will be very happy when you have that kind of system. Clear? Future, we can write a scientific novel, right? Let's say drones will directly deliver to that particular household. I mean, for PDS, we are not that rich, right? For PDS, we are not using drones. Yes? Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the editorials first, important articles. Good editorials today. As I told you, Monday is productive more or less. Yes or no? Now, the first one is about forestalling a cyber Pearl Harbor. Okay. So those who don't know world history, World War II ended more or less with Pearl Harbor because of Pearl Harbor, right? Can we say that, or is it exaggeration? What is the significance of Pearl Harbor in world history? It dragged USA into the Second World War, right? It dragged USA into the Second World War. Till then USA was being very smart by not entering into the Allied, and that is why USA was saved more or less, whereas all the European countries were destroyed. America became superpower. Yes, that is one thing, and I think it's very exaggerating, at the same time probably futuristic scenario also. As if you haven't seen Hollywood series like Person of Interest or Die Hard 4 or Eagle Eye, all these movies, you may not totally appreciate the threat that we are going to face. As you know, there are 5 frontiers for war: land, air, water, cyberspace and space. Okay, so this is the 4th frontier of war, and this is what we call as hybrid war. This is what we call as hybrid war. It's a contactless war, and there are no victims here, like immediate victims are there, but the nations are the victims. The national infrastructures are the victims. As you can see, everything we are discussing is cyber, right? Aadhaar database, GST database, income tax database, bank accounts, hospitals, everything is cyber security or cyber online, correct? Now, once the system crashes, what will happen? Let's say we are celebrating 50,000 points in stock exchanges. So much amount of wealth has been created, right? So what if the stock market is crashed deliberately? Yes, we are saying Atmanirbhar Bharat. We developed some vaccine. Okay, cyber hackers have stolen it. Some other countries also producing the same vaccine. So what is your advantage? Now think about it. Quad. What are we celebrating in Quad? We are able to sell 1 billion vaccines. Yes or no? Indian produced vaccines. If some other country has stolen the same vaccine and started their own domestic production in a different brand, what advantage does you have? And the trade wars between USA and China is actually more about IPR rights, intellectual property rights. It's not about the money, right? It's about China stealing all the ideas from USA and USA companies. So none of that is protected through online, at least as of now. And not stereotyping, but if you go to any typical government offices, they will still be using Microsoft Office with the right hand side, this is a pirated version, please register. Yes, we still use XP for all our ATMs. Microsoft has officially stopped XP updates long ago, half a decade ago, right? So there are a lot of vulnerabilities. What if all the ATM machines are hacked overnight? It's not utopian scenario. It's not easy, but it's also not impossible, right? Where cyber center, the companies like Microsoft and USA, Pentagon, all these things can be hacked. I don't think our banking sector is very safe, right? Yes. So SolarWinds is a hack that has been infecting the Microsoft Office and all the American companies. So Trojan malwares, right? For prelims, just remember the names, just the trivial names. Yes. For example, Stuxnet, the Iranian nuclear malware. Stuxnet in 2008 was a malware which was sent into Iranian nuclear reactors. What? The threat is to stop the cooling process. Okay, when you stop the cooling process in the nuclear reactors, what will happen? The core will melt and accident will take place, right? So America tried to stop Iranian nuclear, reactors using malware. US and Israel collaborated. Stuxnet, it is one of the most creative malwares ever. And you might be thinking, that is why I asked you to see person of interest and all these things. If I have to attack Indian nuclear reactors, all I need to know is what is the chipset that the particular nuclear reactor is using, and I will release the virus somewhere in USA. The virus will slowly travel throughout the world searching for that particular chipset. Right? Stuxnet was designed only to attack Siemens chipsets. So you can tailor suit the virus just like the cold. You can understand, right? I want to destroy a particular company like Micromax, which is an Indian company. I will design a virus which will attack only Micromax phones. That is cyber espionage. And all these things are not utopian. All these things are actually doable. And second thing, we are not even talking about quantum computers. Okay, all this encryption, all this security, whatever we are discussing is with the present existing level of technology. Whereas quantum computing is the next level of technology which can destroy all these things very easily, right? So unless we wake up and start taking serious measures about cyber security, all our growth can be destroyed by a non-state actor or a state-sponsored actor very easily. Just think about it. Pakistan wanted $50 billion from China or something, right? Or China needed something from Pakistan very desperately. Okay, something have changed at the global arena. Pakistan's importance in the eyes of China has increased 10 times. Pakistan will put a clause, give us a new virus, okay, which will cripple the Indian electric grid, okay, and we will allow you to do what you want to do with Pakistan. Then China will give it. Just like the nuclear proliferation, all these advanced tools can also be proliferated. Then, yes. So what, it's a very gloomy scenario, and at the same time I am not saying India is not capable of protecting or defending itself. We need to invest more and more energies. In the recent budget, we have allocated 8,000 crores for quantum computing. Yes. So that needs to be pursued very strictly. Clear? So for prelims, just remember what are the names of the malware and something like that, which are very famous or which. What is Ulysses? Trojan war only? Trojan was a part of the Iliad, right? No?
Greece and Sparta.
Okay, fine, whatever. Trojan War. So one of my favorite story. A very complex problem solved by a simple solution. That is why the idiom comes, right? Be very aware of Greeks who comes with gifts. Okay, when Greeks give you gifts, be very careful. Why? The Trojan horse, which hidden all the soldiers, led to the fall of Troy. So that is where the word Trojan horse comes from. So etymology of the words will always help you. Juggernaut, you must have heard. Juggernaut, Juggernat, Juggernaut. So it comes from Jagannath temple in Puri. Yes. So because that Ratha Yatra is very big, it cannot be stopped. Once it starts, it cannot be stopped. That is where the term Juggernaut comes from. Okay. So lot of interesting etymologies. Again, coming back to the core discussion. Now, Mumbai or Maharashtra was not the only state that was affected by the Chinese attack. So many other Indian installations throughout the country are affected. Yes, China was just only telling you we are capable of doing this. It's like a warning. Yes, so it's up to us to be very proactive and stop the future issue. And he points out very nicely, China is spending around $200 billion on defense. Okay, last weekend review also I have mentioned the same article. China is spending around $200 billion on defense. Just imagine the amount. Yes, and within that it gives a special weightage to strategic support force, which embraces cyber warfare. So war is no longer about guns and bullets only. It's about PR management, it's about cyber attacks, it's about hybrid war. Yes, let's think about it. We have drones. Drones are hacked. Yes, and there are utopian scenarios like where, for example, the Predator drones of USA are flying. Somebody has hacked it in the midway. Okay, and they are using it to attack Indian territories. Who will you blame? America, India, or some other country? Yes, self-driving cars. They can be hacked too. That is why the world's foremost cyber security experts always say, have a dog rather than an alarm. Right? Because it's not safe. Clear? Okay, enough of the cyber security utopian doomsday scenario. Again, the worst case, whatever they will hack is, they will find Excel sheets full of government data. Except that particular officer, nobody will understand. Yes or no? Have you ever been to government offices? No, my dad used to work in a government office. So whenever he brings a pen drive from office, I used to scan it. 1000 Trojan wars. No matter how hard you try, you cannot clean up a government system. So we will probably give a virus to the Chinese. Yes, again.
So how does USA want to have cyber attacks on Indian political interest?
They analyze the scrutinize the traffic, right? See, cyber attack means what? You send a lot of amount of packets towards one particular country. So they are like digital highways, right? So if there is a traffic congestion in one cyber tracking way, so automatically they will come to know. So simply put, it's like, your Google Maps. Whenever there is red, they know a lot of data is being pumped from one country to another country. That is how they come to know. Okay. Yes, exactly. IP addresses and the load that is being sent. Now, this article is a rare article where you find Hindu is in total tandem with government of India. Rare, unique. You can save this, frame it. Yes, you don't find it every other day. So what is India doing? The spirit of Quad is adapted or modified by India. See again, why did India was given so much leeway? India is pivot to Indian Ocean, right? In America's eyes, India is the key to unlock the Chinese puzzle. Without India, there is no unlocking of Chinese puzzle in American eyes, right? So that is why whatever India said, the other country said, yes, yes, yes. Okay, so that is that good thing that we have done, and once in a while we found something good that we can export. And we are milking it to the maximum extent. This is the power of Make in India. If we can make one vaccine and sell so much, think about 1,000 items that are made in India. We will put a spot, let's say if we created iPhone, we would have made sure that there is an iPhone on everybody's hand in the planet. That is the power of Indian marketing. Yes or no? So it's high time we realize more Atmanirbhar Bharat and make in India. Think about it. If we were America, what would we have done? Like we wouldn't have stopped, right? Selling. We wouldn't have stopped in selling, right? 24/7. Yes. If you were China, like make in China, China would have shame. Like this is our potential. Oh my God. Okay. So lot of things. Again, it's a good thing, right? It's an empirical data that there is a huge amount of market out there, and companies will come to our aid. As I told you in past classes, economy is the only thing that will keep attracting India's growth. India has to become a $5 trillion economy. If we didn't have COVID vaccine, what would we have done in the Quad? Nothing, right? We would have issued one more statement. Right. The job crunch growing fires of nativism. One more interesting article, lot of
Regarding the COVID-19 vaccination, it is being sponsored by the US. And even their vaccines are being sold.
we will always say what we want to hear, right? So yes. So this article is about Haryana reservation, right? It's a very good article. There are a lot of things to learn from this particular article. Why the IT cells of particular political parties are very active in certain states? The answer I got today. More than half of all the graduates in Haryana are jobless. We can have similar stats from the surrounding areas of the National Capital Territory, right? Yes or no? When so many people are jobless, but everybody have internet access, what will happen? IT cells will be very active. Yes or no? They will pay you 10 rupees per tweet, 2 rupees per SMS. Yes or no? That is the employment opportunity, right? So it's about money. Where money flows, the forwards will go. Okay. Now, these are very empirical data, right? See, think about it. Female labor force participation ratio. On an average, India, it's around 25%. So 25% is the female labor force participation ratio of women in the country. Now 80% of women in Haryana are not even able to get a job. So half of the GDP is lost there. Yes, and half of the youth is unemployed. Now link it to the last line. When I know that is a situation, right? When the electoral cycle confronted with millions of jobless voters, again youth are voters, right? They will be the ones actively forwarding the messages, creating that atmosphere for electorate. So all I need to do is what? Manipulate them or tell them that I am on your side. See, take any state in India. Whenever there are about next year there is an election, this year state election commission notification will come. Yes or no? SI notification, state PSC notifications, all these notifications will come. Why? Because top is the youth, because youth are the most active voice. They create a tone and their parents will create a tone. We are not only thinking about the youth, right? Their families also. So every unemployed youth, their parents are also potential vote banks. So we cannot create a huge mass opposition, right? We cannot create an incumbency on our own. So that is why states like Haryana are not having any other option but to go for populistic measures. This we have discussed. But now we are throwing in empirical data, right? Half of the youth are unemployed. Now next good point about this article is before competitive federalism there is one more point that he talks about. Right. The 3 richest states are 3 times richer than the 3 poorest large states. Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Madhya Pradesh. Now, along with this include GST. After GST, there is no fiscal, not fiscal federalism, fiscal freedom. Yes or no? So states don't have that luxury to offer benefits to the industries. I can create ease of doing business by saying, you know, if Santosh wants to set up a company in Haryana, land is ready. You need 100 acres, land is ready. You need to set up something else, land is ready. So depending on your requirements, I can create land pools, right? So you are a Footloose industry, that is one thing. You are a Sunrise industry, it's one thing. You need a brownfield development, that is one thing. Yes, you need to create a logistic mechanism to the nearest highway. Such kind of lands are available. But I cannot give you taxes because taxes are controlled by central government. That is one part of the argument. I totally don't buy it because you have to do business in country. Anywhere you have to pay 18%, right?
Sir, but revenue decides the rest, all other things.
Sorry?
Revenue.
Again, that is what I am saying. You set up a shop in Maharashtra or you set up a shop in Kerala, still you are paying the same amount of GST, right? For company perspective. For state perspective, yes, taxation will come.
Land concessions and all, it is based on the revenue potential of the state, it can create that ecosystem. Right?
No, unused land is untapped potential, right? That is what asset monetization is coming. Let's say there is 1,000 acres in Haryana. It is not doing anything now. If I give it to industry, still, irrespective of my revenue potential, that still 1,000 acres is lying with me. Yes, it's more about the geographical proximity. I cannot set up an industry in Nagaland, right? Right, because of the logistics. That is what he says, the agglomeration effect, synergies. What did Karnataka do? Karnataka allowed IT sectors to be set up. When they were set up, automatically international transport, traveling, airport development, logistic management, IKEA, everybody is coming to Karnataka. So one thing attracted the other, and that attracted more potential people. So you cannot believe that people in Bengaluru are only Karnataka people, right? People from all over the country have started and settled in Bengaluru. Bengaluru is no longer only of Kannadigas. Yes, pride of Karnataka. Yes, okay. So I told you I will come back. Yes, so right. So agglomeration effect. That is what exactly happened in Hyderabad. Yes or no? Madhapur 20 years ago was a nobody's land, no man's land. Now it is richest part of Hyderabad. How did that happen? Not only people from Hyderabad or Telangana, right? Throughout the country are setting up the shops. One thing led to another. And that is what is happening. Now, why not Kerala? See, think about it. Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Delhi, Mumbai, Pune. Right? There are 29 states or 28 states in the country. Every capital is a potential gold mine. But why do we keep hearing 4 or 5 city names repeatedly? Why not the rest? Yes, the hub and spoke model is not totally entertained. If you take USA, only the left coast and the east coast are developed. The entire Middle East is, like the middle part of USA is not developed. The same applies to China. The eastern coast is totally developed. But India is probably one of those rare countries from that corner to this corner, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Arunachal Pradesh to Gujarat. We have huge kind of development activities, but that synergies are not taking place equally. That is what this particular article is arguing about. But the problem of this article is also it is not offering any solutions. Always remember, it is also not offering any solutions. Small states are not in a position to create more employment. Small states don't have money. But what else small states can do? This is where the idiom comes. If you are looking for a shade, right? The best time is to plant a tree 20 years ago. Yes or no? The next best time is today. Yes. So if you are a small state, invest in human capital. Haryana public system or Uttar Pradesh, there was a huge ad, right? I don't know how many of you saw that. There is a government school 10th class exam going in Uttar Pradesh. All the windows are filled with people related to supplying cheaties. Bihar, okay, often, okay, fine. Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, any state, right? That is a common practice. Why? the quality of education is not good. So a person who is in 10th class cannot solve a basic division problem. So how will he go on to do something productive in his life? How can he become a skilled labor? Yes or no? Yes. If you see IITs, all the Telugu state schools and colleges, they will have this front page ads, right? 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4. Yes. Why is that craze? You don't see that craze in Haryana or interior parts of the country. Yes. Everybody will be sending your son or daughter to some hotspots, Nellore. Yes. Hyderabad, Vijayawada. Why not someone from a government school? A typical government school. Why? We are not investing in the human capital. That structural reform has to start, and that is 20 years down the line CM's problem, right? Not my problem. If that structural issue is solved, then automatically skilled labor will come. And as Yuval Noah Harari says, whatever you are teaching in the schools today, from now till next 2030, by 2035 it will be useless. Half of the workforce in the future will do jobs which are not even invented yet. So they are not even ready for those kind of jobs. Yes, creative problem solving, maths, AI based, or lot of things, and you are not even ready. You are struggling about 2 plus 2. They are teaching about coding, White Hat Junior, and this. Yes, and we have to include demographic dividend also. Lot of things have to be understood. We have to structurally accept that whatever the human capital we are creating is going to be a useless class. Yes or no? See, earlier there used to be a time where police inspector used to remember a lot of data about his own state or district where he is going to work, a police constable. Why? If a crime is about to happen, if some data comes to him, he has to analyze on the spot, right? He used to mug up all the data. How many districts are there in my state? What are their district headquarters? What are the most important villages? What is the distance between Vijayawada and Tenali or Vijayawada and Hyderabad? Why? For him personally, that will help him in his job. Now all he needs is a smartphone. Yes or no? Mugging up of data is not going to make you a better police officer. Probably training you in forensic department will make you a better police officer. Clear? I hope you understand. So we haven't updated the curriculum, we haven't understood the core demand of the society, and we are creating policies. Now obviously this article is written by somebody from Congress, so it is very sugar coated in criticism but very careful in not giving any suggestions at the same time. Right? Now the main question is, how do you develop that intra-regional development? How do you balance that? The 3 biggest states are there, right? That is what he says. How are they going to help the 3 poorest states?
Investing on the capacity of that state.
Investing on the capacity of that states, okay. Skilling and upskilling, okay. Investing on human capital, okay.
Setting up of industries where the geographical proximity to the raw material is not needed.
Okay. One way to look at it.
Like for example, if let's say IT sector is if they allow it to flourish in Bihar, right now they don't have skilled labor force for that. So the people from other state can go, but over a period of time, due to demand, their population will also get skilled.
Okay.
So are you asking how will the 3 large states help the 3 small states?
How will the 3 large states help the 3 small states, or how do we develop the 3 small states? So again, Uttar Pradesh cannot be called small, right? We can call it poor. So how do you cover that intra-balance or intra-regional development? That is the main question. Yes, do we actually stifled the growth of the country by introducing GST? Is fiscal federalism really needed for the growth of the nation? See, of course, nobody is buying the argument that 75% reservation is going to solve any problem. Even the article also says, right, it's a populistic measure. So how do you solve the problems? That is what a bureaucrat has to spend time in thinking. You have empirical data, 50% of employment youth are unemployed. First you need to ask why they are unemployed. When they came out of colleges, why were they not employable? Not only in Haryana, if you have a job in Bengaluru, you will search and go, right? Somebody born in Delhi is now settled in Delhi, Bengaluru. How does he know? He studied in a good college, campus placements are through network. He got to know a job in Bengaluru, he came there, he settled, he finalized. Now why are youth from so many states are unable to find jobs anywhere? And government jobs are drying up. With privatization as a focus, less and less government jobs will be available.
In the long run, maybe educational reform may address this problem.
Introducing of coding and all those things from 6th class onwards might solve some problem, yes?
Practical learning instead of
We
theory.
have a 3-language policy, right? So in individual state we have English probably the state mother tongue. And then maybe intra-states can have deal like, okay, you teach my language also when they come to my state, they can have opportunities. And I mean, we are already doing such things with other countries, foreign countries. For example, Germany or...
But I don't think language is a problem, right? Language is a hampering mechanism. If you go to any South Indian state, there is a very good Marwadi who speaks Tamil better than most of us. Yes, because of the nature of job, and people adapt.
That will take up earlier, but then okay, no, once we learn the language, okay, they're coming to this developing state, so it's kind of remittance kind of system will be developed. So I'll be.
You mean to say the Tamil Nadu students should learn Hindi or Uttar Pradesh students should learn?
Uttar Pradesh students should
Learn Tamil.
Then
Okay.
he'll come work in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
And then he'll send back money to his parents in Uttar Pradesh. So kind of within the state development.
Sorry.
We have global language, right? But moreover, if you're talking about the particular states, they need some incentive.
Not the 3 states, the poorest states and the rich states.
So they need some incentive to just go and spend in that poor states.
What about Nagaland?
Yeah. So they have some potential, but which are not being explored by other states. So they need to incentivize that particular state also. Like if at all homegrown states like Andhra Pradesh or Telangana want to invest in the Nagaland, so they must provide some incentive within India itself. So our players, regional players will get attracted towards it to explore the tourism or
Create a visa system.
But again, don't you think the demographics will change and people are not willing to accept you inner line permit and so on and so forth? So India is always a unique nation, right? That is the beauty of India.
it comes to the political consensus
Between the states, then that is accepted. Yes, fine. Anything else? 15th Finance Commission and GST, how are they going to help the poorest states? 15th Finance Commission has the same intention in mind, right? They want to help the weaker states. They want to balance that intra-regional development. That is why fund devolution is done in a different manner based on the demographic dividend. Yes, and all the government schemes you can think of in education, health are applied more on these states only. Yes, Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat is also a unifying factor where exchange of students will happen. Yes, it's not like we don't run out of schemes or we don't have plans. The only issue is long-term vision and implementation. Everybody is worried about now. Yes or no? We live in now. Probably that is the problem. Clear? So do read these 2 articles.
when we talk about GST, like it's more like a coercion on the states. Like, poor states, they are being
Again, GST I will tell you, GST is like this. GST is like when all the products in the country are streamlined, spillover effects will happen and that will lead to boom of the economy and that spillover effects will reach the states. So the trickle down theory is more or less believed in GST mechanisms. The more you have GST, the more simplified the taxation is, the more industries will come, the more GDP will grow, the richer the states will become in theory.
but even state should understand this.
In theory, I told you, right? Again.
Instead go with the bilateral relationship between states.
Again, bilaterals won't work. Bilaterals will never work. There is always this regional pride, right? Within states also, you see Rayalaseema, Kosra, they have their own issues. Kosa, Telangana. Now, if we talk Telangana and Uttar Pradesh, I don't think it will work unless there is a tie.
That is the cooperative federalism.
We need competitive federalism. We need you to have a cutthroat environment where Telangana and Andhra are fighting like neck to neck to make it ease of doing business number one state. All the things are ready.
Again, all states are not equally gifted, right? And some states have some better resources, access to better resources, and then some don't. So we will focus. The state will focus on its own strengths, and then
That is what the 15th Finance Commission does, right? If you are blessed with the geographical region and the natural resources and all these things, you grow, we will distribute the resources. We cannot expect Nagaland or Arunachal Pradesh to contribute on lines with Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra, right? Yes, because of historical and geographical regions. Yes, clear? Multiple capitals. That's a good idea, because rotation will happen. But again, the problem here is it will be limited more of real estate rather than anything else. If Telangana is made into a union territory, my dream, okay? Yes. If Telangana is made into a union territory and the second capital of the country, what will happen? Lot of infrastructural development will happen in Hyderabad. The land rates will grow, right? Will it lead to industrial activity? How? Why? See, for example, the entire cabinet is coming to Hyderabad for 3 months in winters to avoid the air pollution. Okay, what will they do? They will do the policy activity. How will it lead to the regional development? It is all. You don't see any industries in Delhi, right? Huge. Okay, so what he's saying, I hope all of you understand what he's trying to say. If let's say hypothetically Hyderabad is the second capital of the country, more industrialization will happen in and around Hyderabad. Is it true? Hyderabad, in and around Hyderabad. Not necessarily is what they are trying to say. Yes, but at least land rates will grow high. Other commodities will be cheaper.
if land rates grow high, then industries will run away from them.
In and around. See, we don't need industries in London, right? London is what? Financial capital. We attract companies. Okay. Think about it. No immediate answer needed, but there will be an entire chapter dedicated to your GS paper 3, intra-regional development. Yes, 15th Finance Commission and all these things. Good article to think lot of things. Salutary reminder. Just remember, go home and read Ramesh Singh or any standard economy textbook. The chapter is inflation. What is core inflation? What is inflation? What is stagflation? What is hyperinflation? Yes, what is inflation targeting? 4 plus or minus 2. And the summary of inflation is what? Price stability should be prioritized in comparison to growth. Which is more important? It's like the chicken and egg question, right? Do we need inflation to boost growth, or do we need growth? Then we will take care of inflation.
So yesterday one article came like Krishnamurthy Subramanian said growth should be prioritized.
That is what I am asking you today, right? Hindu is saying stability should be prioritized. Inflation targeting should be prioritized over growth. You are growing, but your inflation is 8%. It is eroding all your savings. Then what kind of growth are you having? Growth is not about country, right? Growth is about me.
This article also argues the kind of inflation we are having is volatile inflation rather than the industrial inflation.
Exactly.
Exactly, the frameworks of CPI should be changed.
So that is what, like presently we have to take the backdrop of COVID also into consideration, right? If food inflation is high, why? Supply chain bottlenecks, structural issues are there, and demand side issues are there. One day you have good demand, the other day you don't have any kind of demand. You are saying there are green shoots in the economy, but the next month the industry says we are slowing down. Lot of complications are there. For prelims question, just remember what are the types of inflation. But personally speaking, inflation to a healthy extent is always good. 5 or 4.4 to 5 inflation is a good thing for a country. It will keep the engines burning. It will come back and hurt the common man. At the end of the day, all these elaborate democracies and all these things are for what? For a common man? right? So as this article argues, if my vegetables are getting costlier, if my daily perishables are getting costlier, what kind of savings do you expect from me? In the long run, there won't be any savings from domestic households. When there are no savings from domestic households, there won't be investments. Without investments, you will attract a recession, and that is a 10 times a much bigger problem than higher inflation. Clear? So you have to always see the longer picture or the bigger picture. So we cannot sacrifice long-term growth for long-term stability for temporary growth. But again, can you blame the government for focusing on growth? At this present juncture, it is very difficult. So this is totally new arena. Don't judge governments from your old spectacles. Right? What happened in 2020 is totally unique. It's a new landmark. 20 years from now, students will read how the governments have reacted by not knowing what the future is. It's like going in a fog, right? You cannot see beyond 3 feet, and you are driving at 60 miles per hour. Either you might take the straight road or you might hit a tree. Only after hitting or going you will know, right? You cannot judge today that you are, I told you should have stopped. If you stop, someone might hit us from the back. That is also a possibility, right? So you are in the between devil and deep sea, or what we call as catch-22 situation. Yes? Okay, that's all from Hindu today. Again, useless. Yes. So just remember the Nagaland issue, it's not totally dead. Naga insurgent groups, they are collecting tax, parallel tax. Yes, because of this, industries are leaving Nagaland and moving to Assam. Right? There is a peace deal between Indian government and the Nagaland. Right? So there are insurgent groups, they are collecting their own taxes. Okay, at the gunpoint. Those who have seen the Telugu movie Businessman and felt it was a good idea, this is what will happen. Okay, so yes, clear? You cannot run a parallel government within a democratic state, and that is what Mr. N. Ravi, the interlocutor, has mentioned, and everybody criticized him for. Clear? So Nagaland problem is still growing. The same happened to Naxalites also, right? Naxalites also started extorting money from businessmen to allow development activities. So the means to provide welfare for people, the Naga movement, has become a end in itself. Yes or no? You wanted a separate Naga country for what? For the development and welfare of Naga people? Now what are you doing? You are using the same tool to empower yourself rather than empower the people of Nagaland. Very good example. Now, I don't know all the facts of this particular argument, but whatever happened to humanity. So a particular Muslim boy was drinking water from a temple tap, and he was beaten for that. Yes, so temples are places of compassion. Yes, so we don't know the full facts, but we assume he was a kid, and a kid is drinking from a temple tap, and this is something that is not acceptable. That is very hard to draw the line between Hinduism and Hindutva. Yes, so Rama, the Lord Rama, would have forgiven Ravana in the last moment also if we have all done is ask for mercy, forgiveness. That is what Sita Mata repeatedly said, right? All you have to do is seek forgiveness. So that is the compassion or the culture that is the Indian ethos, and this is not what is Indian ethos whatsoever, unforgivable. Okay. Now on the other hand, compassion. A 21-year-old youth stabbed someone, and the judge asked him to serve in Gurudwara for 1 month. Okay, is it the right thing to do? The victim and the perpetrator, both of them have come to an agreement. The victim, the person who was stabbed, he himself have forgiven the person. So a youth and his mother were arguing. So this particular person intervened, don't argue with your mother. So in a fit of anger, that particular youth stabbed this bystander. Yes or no? So you try to do something good and you are stabbed, and you understand the anger or emotion and you forgave him. So taking that into consideration and future of that particular youth, the judge is saying in the Bangla Sahib, all Gurudwaras are called as Sahibs, right? The reverence they have towards the Gurudwaras. So Bangla Sahib, you have to serve in 1 month and you are free to go. Community service instead of punishment. Reformative justice or compassion in the wrong sense. How many of you think it's a wrong move? Everybody who will stab will say, I will serve the community. Or anybody who has done the crime.
So considering that, like in a way, it happened just over that heat of anger, and he is doing good work. And if he is reforming, then it is good. But if it is taken as a precedent, and everybody who does this, like same as the judgment in the rape case. So if it is taken for granted that we'll allow this only, then it is a wrong.
Exactly. Where to draw that line? Who will draw that line? Judge will draw that line. Okay.
In this context, like what he is saying, like he is having a huge future.
He doesn't have any criminal antecedents. That means he is not a criminal, or he doesn't have any historical crime against him. So that is the first and only crime he has committed. So, is it okay?
So might be his first.
In his case also, the youngest person was a juvenile, was the most guilty. Like he was not guilty of doing the crime, and he did the most harm to the girl, and he was not guilty. In this case, the person is guilty. So where to draw the line of healing the guilt by the perpetrator?
Morally, is it right?
Might be his first one.
Might be his first.
Might be starting of his criminal.
Okay, I crashed my bike or car first time. Is it okay? You lost your leg. First time only, right? First time only you lost your leg. Yes. No, I'm asking you. Yeah.
The precedents of this case have been very tightly set. I mean, first of all, he has not absconded. He has
No background.
no background.
Hmm.
And then
The victim himself has forgiven,
the entire thing has happened.
and they live in the same area. They know each other. Okay.
So the precedent itself are very tightly set. So
Hmm.
I think it's a good reformative example, and then there is no leakage
Hmm.
in the future. Probably.
So how many of you think it's a good thing?
Even the victim himself has forgiven.
I mean, the victim can be coerced to forgive in some cases, but then
No bribe has been given. Okay, fine. Okay, I understand your point, Nihar. Yes. How many of you think it's a bad idea? 3.5. What's your hand, Rajni?
So it's like if we take just this case, then it is we can say it's a good idea. If we take it as a precedent, then
Community service is not unique to India, right? It is implemented throughout the Western countries. So they ask you to serve a lot of things for a lot of crimes.
so also if we look at the name of the accused,
Hmm.
in this case is a Muslim accused, and he is asked to serve in the
Gurudwara that promotes the Indian ethos. And they are
welcomes everyone.
that is what Indian ethos are, right?
In a way, like the purpose of sending the person to jail is for
Reformative. Okay.
But again, since spending the entire time with other criminals and all,
He will get hardened rather than.
instead of that, this is better to.
Yes. So in a country which has accepted a ISIS trained terrorist to get back to normal life using compassionate measures, I don't think this is a severe crime. So it's not a big deal in my humble opinion. Again, it's subjective to interpretations, right? So we allow terrorists or people who fought for ISIS to come back to India and resume their normal lives because we understand that they were brainwashed or they were in a difficult age bracket or a time period, and we try to give them second chances. So justice is all about reformative rather than retributive. As he rightly pointed out, sending him to jail will only make him a hardened criminal. They will learn new skills there. Jails are Ivy League of crimes, right? Yes, they develop new networks, they develop bad habits. So again, justice system has to be reformed also. But the thing is, it's a unique precedent. Always remember what will happen in the future, nobody knows. So giving second chance is not a wrong thing. Most of us deserve second chances, but life hardly gives them again and again. Yes, so you can use this in essay, ethics, GS paper 2, lot of places, society also. Think about it. Clear? Yes. Now contrast this to the temple example where people were beaten for drinking water. Yes. So for prelims question, remember National Population Register, Census Registration Authority, Registrar General of India. Clear? You have to link it to CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, not needed now. When it is implemented, you will know. Yes. So I hope any questions? Right. So there is one more article in Indian Express about reservation system. Mr. Satish Deshpande. Lot of modern Indian history context is there. Pune Pact, Government of India Act 1935, and so on and so forth. Do read it for prelims perspective. Right. On Saturday there was an article for Dandi March in Indian Express. What is the significance of Dandi March? So please do read that article also. Modern Indian history, the entire period is very, very important. Dandi March in and around. Clear? Yes. So this also can be used for the supportive arguments. So Pakistan Hindus are forgiving temple vandalizers, right? It's state's responsibility to protect, and state has to protect them. Even again, it's a misnomer to believe compassion is weakness. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is a strength. Yes, and at the same time, you are not foolish to believe that somebody will come and you will allow them to destroy you. Nobody is that innocent, right? Because nobody actually believes in the scriptures or all these things in its entirety. If you read Bhagavad Gita, there is a line, right? Nainam chindante shastrani, nainam dahati bhavaka. So that means your soul cannot be destroyed by knives, weapons, and all those things. If somebody is coming to kill you, you won't say, kill me because my soul is eternal. Are you that stupid? No, right? You have to believe that, you have to work towards that direction, but you don't actually say that I will stand before a bus. Okay, I am soul, I am eternal. Nothing can happen to me. Yes. So that is a false understanding of the society, right? So compassion is not weakness. You have to maintain an army, you have to maintain everything, and at the same time you can be compassionate. You can do both. Clear? Yes. What are my suggestions? Intra-regional development, zonal council has to be, 15th Finance Commission, interstate councils has to be developed. Yes. Focus on clustered development, one state, one product. Lot of things are there, right? Again, that is what the beauty of India is. We have the bulkiest constitution and more number of rules and schemes. Yes or no? So sooner than later you will see a telegram ad. 550 government schemes of India will be revised in 1 hour. Okay, people will run such kind of schemes. It's a scam. Yes, why? 550 schemes, how will you remember? 550. Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, what will you do with all those schemes? Yes, hardly 30 important schemes are there, you have to mug them up. But the problem is implementation. Simply put, Aditya, think about it. Hyderabad and Bengaluru are the IT capitals of the country, right? They don't have a bullet train connecting them. Yes or no? Or they don't even have a decent train which connects them in less than 6 hours. 6 hours. The goal, again, it's not developed, right? That means if Hyderabad and Bengaluru are connected for less than 2 hours journey, think about the synergy of IT capitals that will develop. Yes or no? We don't have that. That is the problem. The synergies have to take place. Think about it, like Hyderabad, Kurnool, Bengaluru, then Chennai. The entire IT corridor will develop and spillover effects will automatically happen. You take Visakhapatnam, behind a hill, you are developing IT park so that nobody can see it. Yes, what is the purpose? Yes, clear? Yes, okay then, see you tomorrow. Common sense is very uncommon, as Volatile has said.